Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Namaste Wellness Show, where we talk about all things holistic health for the mind, body, and spirit, for people and pets, with a touch of cultural soul. Today, my name is Laura. I'm your host. Thank you so much for being here. Today, our show is going to be cultural and soulful in celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I have a very special guest who marched alongside with Dr. Martin Luther King. He is a civil rights activist himself. He was Dr. King's education director during for Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. My guest is a lifelong educator. Among his many accomplishments, he served as the Dean of the College of Urban Development at Michigan State University and has been a consultant for many of the nation's largest school districts. He's also an author of many books, including The Urban Challenge, A Call for Change, Providing Solutions for Black Male Education, Expect the Best, Provide the Most, How High Expectations, Outstanding Instruction, and Curricular Innovations Help All Students Succeed. His most recent book is his autobiography. He is also a very devoted family man, and he's been married to his beautiful wife, Letty, for over 65 years. They are the father of 3 sons, attorney Vincent Green, business manager and MBA Kurt Green, and digital technology and personalized learning manager and youngest son, Kevin Green, all of whom assist in providing scholarship and consulting services to improve K through 12 education on the team of Robert L. Green Associates. Welcome, Dr. Robert L. Green. Hi, welcome. Thank you for being on the show today. Tell us a little bit about your history, how you started out. Well, a little bit about your roots, how you grew up, and who your mentors were, your influencers, and how you came to become educated and a civil rights activist. We'll go with that part too.
Okay. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and my one of 9 children, 5 boys and 4 girls. Mother's name Alberta, father's name Thomas. My father was very pushy about education. Mm-hmm. He was pushy about education because in Jones County, Georgia, Haddock Station, my father wanted to go to school, and his dad wouldn't let him go to school, made him work in the fields, and he supervised his 2 of his sisters. One was Queen Anne Lamar, and the other was Sadie Ashford. And they were the 2 people that my dad was really responsible for early on. But any relative that came around that needed work, my dad would give them work in Jones County, Georgia. Now, at 5 years of age, or 6 years of age, my father went to complete another year of schooling. And his dad said, no, you got to work in the fields and pick cotton. So my father was always upset about that, always wanted to go to school, couldn't go to school. But he had 9 children.
Right.
9 to go to school and to get an education. And so that's all my dad talked about, get an education. And as a result, we ended up with one brother with an MD and sisters nurses, and other brothers got college degrees. That was because of my dad. So education was a primary focus in our life.
But now, wasn't your mother a teacher too? Wasn't she a teacher as well?
No, she was a teacher. My mother was a community activist.
Okay.
My mother used to get barrels of clothing. I can see this now. My brother John and my mother would go out to jail hustings, and they would give her nice new clothing, and my mother would ship all that clothing to Haiti. My mother was very involved in Haitian relief. I'm now 90. I'm an old man. I was a little kid. I remember my mother having my brother John and myself lift barrels of clothing that she would collect at different stores, department stores in Detroit, put them on the truck, take them down to the Michigan Central train station, and we shipped them off to Haiti.
Wow.
So my mother very, very much involved. That's what she did. She was very active in the church. My dad was a pastor in the ministry, so my mother was active in the church with him. But she never. Well, she did do one thing. My mother organized the charitable workers of the world. Charitable workers of the world. That she would collect clothing and distribute that clothing. Primarily to Haiti was a major country, but another, I can't think of the name of the other African country, but Haitian relief was very much a part of our mother's effort.
Wow. Even so back then.
She was a good worker. My mother would hire women, black women, and go out and work for white women all day, bring the money back to my mother, and my mother would take a portion of it, and they would keep the rest. Wow. And my mother, the charity workers of the world. So my mother had women working for her. White women would call and drop clothing by the house. And my mother would pick it up. They would wash the clothing and iron it. I remember that as a little kid. So my mother was very active. My father worked in the factory, Fisher Body, and also he was a pastor with
right. Yeah.
Okay.
So they were. That sounds like you had. You education was very important, as well as charitable work was very important as a young boy. So was that what catapulted you into the civil rights movement?
My sister Lethea, one of my 4 sisters, gave me a book by Langston Hughes. And I read that book when I was probably 11, 12 years of age. And that's when I first began to learn about race discrimination, especially in the South. But my sister reminded me that race discrimination was a factor in the North. So I was reading about racial discrimination as written by Langston Hughes, the great writer, when I was as young as maybe 12 or 13 years of age. So discrimination was always something that I was concerned about. My dad talked about it in the South. My father talked about how he was almost lynched once. Here's another thing. One day, my dad took me shopping. I'm sorry, let me reverse it. I took my dad shopping out on 8 when blacks could hardly go out there, and I bought him a new top coat. It was in the wintertime. We came back home to Detroit. I said, Dad, tell me something that you know that you've never shared with anybody else. He said, oh boy, I don't know anything. I said, Dad, wait a minute. You're not going to get all that easy. You're going to share something with me because I just bought you a new top coat. And we laughed. And we sat down, and he told me that when he was, I think, 14 years of age, he and another black kid saw one of their buddies hung from a tree. He was lynched.
Was that down south or was that north? Was that down south?
Down south. So my father was maybe 11, 12 years of age. I was in Jones County, Georgia, Halleck Station. And so I asked my dad, what did he do? My father said nothing. He said every now and then whites would lynch a black man to keep other blacks in place. Now it's interesting that although I'm blocking on her name, but the female politician in Georgia, whatever her name is, she was raised in the same area, and she talked about it as my dad. And I meant to drop a note, and I just haven't done it. But so my father saw discrimination at a very early age, and I think that led him to become active in the church.
Right.
And
well, let me ask you, Dr. Green, and I know I might slip up and call you cousin Bob, because remember when I was going to Michigan State University, you used to call me cousin Laura. But yeah, do you think, I mean, because you were growing up before the civil rights movement, do you think your family, your parents in the North, I know it wasn't as much racism in the North, but do you think they shielded you all from racism as children? Because did you feel that you never really experienced it yourself as a child, correct?
Well, in a way, I worked in an Italian barber shop when I was maybe 9 or 10 years of age, cleaning spittoons, sweeping the floor, and I would hear white men. I didn't know at the time they were Italians, but it was an Italian, and they used to use the N-word a lot. Oh, and I began to understand the nature of their feelings. They talked about blacks. The blacks were lazy, blacks were no good. I used to hear that coming from these white men. Of course, I never said anything because I was a little kid. So I began to.
You didn't experience that. You didn't know anything about that either, because you know your family wasn't like that, and you knew. No. And I remember Aunt Sadie, would tell stories, because Aunt Sadie and Aunt Sadie and Aunt Sis were your aunts. They were my mom's aunts too, and they were my grandmother's sister. And they would tell stories like that. But I knew growing up, we never. I didn't know anybody lazy in our family, everybody worked. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, go ahead and finish saying what you were saying.
That's what we heard. So I never expected anything decent from whites. And think about San Francisco. Let's take San Francisco as an example. People always talk about, I miss my San Francisco, a liberal community. Oh, it's such a nice. I drove a taxi cab. I was one of the first blacks to drive a yellow taxi cab. I want to say this. I had as many as 2 or 3 jobs to support Letty and my 2 little boys when they were growing up. Another job was driving a yellow cab. I was the first black to drive a yellow cab in San Francisco. The second one was a man who later went to medical school, Louis Davis. But anyway, to make a long story short, I used to watch the way whites treated blacks in San Francisco. This was not Mississippi or Alabama. This is San Francisco, California. And see, later on, I worked for Martin Luther King Jr., and I knew about discrimination in the South. So I learned at a young man's age that discrimination was everywhere in America, and that living in a northern urban community did not shelter you from discrimination. It was there. It was everywhere. And Langston Hughes' book, I read one of his books, as I said before, that my sister Lethea gave me to read, and he talked about discrimination in the South. But also, my sister said, don't forget, Lethea said, there's also discrimination in the North. And I saw it as a kid growing up in Detroit.
Okay. So now, let's talk about, so that was pre-civil rights. So let's talk about the civil rights movement and your relationship with Dr. King. How did you get connected to Dr. King in the civil rights movement?
Okay. I remember it was a national meeting of the National Office of the NAACP. They had a national meeting in San Francisco. And I had read about the Montgomery bus boycott in Rosa Parks. And the year that the boycott was going, Martin Luther King Jr. was asked to be the keynote speaker at the meeting in San Francisco. So I was driving my yellow cab. I parked it behind the Civic Center. Went in and sat in the back. And King was just getting going in his speech. And I tell you, I was just stunned at a man who could speak like he could speak, not being afraid, working in Alabama with Rosa Parks, whom I met later on. And I was impressed by him. He finished. I'll never forget, there was a singer by the name of Mahalia Jackson. I don't know if you're old enough to remember her. But anyway,
my sister, I think, sang with her.
Okay, Mahalia Jackson was supposed to sing, but she had a sore throat and couldn't sing. And were mobbed around Martin Luther King Jr. And I worked my way through the crowd, and I tugged him on his suit coat. He turned around and looked at me, and I said, "My name is Robert Green, and I'd like to work with you someday." He said, "Well, what do you do now?" I said, "I'm going to school, working on my bachelor's degree, or might have been my master's, I don't know. And I'm driving a taxi cab part-time." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what you do. You stay in school and finish school. When you finish school, you contact me." So many years later, when I had got my PhD, we needed students at Michigan State needed some money to run a summer tutorial project at Rutgers in Holly Springs, Mississippi. We didn't have any money. So I had this great idea. Why don't we call King and have King come up and give a speech, and we'll raise some money. Nobody knew him. But I remember there was a lady by the name of Edwina Moss. She's married now. Her husband's a preacher in Cleveland, Ohio. She worked for him. I found out that she worked for him. I called her and told her what we were trying to do to raise money for a summer tutorial project, Michigan State students. And she got Martin Luther King Jr. with all the scheduling and everything to come to Michigan State and speak.
Oh, wow.
The auditorium, which was packed, and it had an audio feed covering his speech in another room. About 5,000 students came out to hear King speak. And I reminded him that he told me years ago to get an education. I'm now on the faculty at Michigan State. And he said, "Well, okay, why don't you come and help me out some?" I went to John Hanna, who was president of Michigan State, and asked him for some leave time. He gave it to me. And he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to go work for Martin Luther King Jr." He said, "Oh, okay." And I always had a good relationship with John Hanna, because I remember one day when I was finishing my PhD, I was walking to the Michigan State University library, and this big, tall white man came, stopped his car, got out, and started walking very quickly towards me. I said, "Oh my God, here comes another, you know what." So I was a wrestler at San Francisco State College. As a matter of fact, I got on the wall my wrestling. I took third in wrestling competition in California. So I went in a wrestling stand, and he came up to me and said, "Young man, where are you going?" I said, "Going to the library." "Why are you going to the library?" "I'm going there to." He was nice but gruff. I said, "To do some research. I'm working on my PhD." He said, "You're working on your PhD?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "What is your name?" He said, "My name is John Hanna. I said, what do you do? He said, I'm president of Michigan State.
Oh,
So that's how I met him. I met him outside of the MSU library. And
okay.
whenever I needed anything on campus, students being discriminated against, black students. Remember Landon Hall? Landon Hall had a
Yeah,
bad,
Landon Hall. Yes.
right on Grand River, had a terrible reputation
Landon Hall.
for black women. If a black young lady was in a room and a white girl was accidentally assigned to the room, they made the black girl move.
Oh.
Very, very student I never forget. There was a guy, I think his name was Clarence Peaks. He was a football player. He went to the union to get a haircut, and they wouldn't cut his hair. He came to me. I went to John Hanna, took him over to the union, and had the union barbers cut his hair and Hannah's hair. He said, if you ever refuse to cut the hair of another student, I want to fire you. So that's how I met John Hanna. Anyway.
Now was he the one, is that how you became, he hired you as the Dean of the College of Urban Development? Was he the
John
president?
John Hanna played a role in it, but it was Cliff Warden. Well,
I was just
ask you a
Go ahead.
question about racism. My sister Lethea taught me about it and gave me a book, Langston Hughes, to read on discrimination in the South. But she said, remember, there's also discrimination in the North as well.
Right.
That's all that.
I just wanted to show a few pictures. There was just some pictures with Dr. King, and then we had pictures with Coretta Scott King, because you had said that Letty, your wife, was good friends with Coretta as well. And I was just going to show a few of the pictures there.
I was very active with students at Michigan State, and especially students who were discriminated against. Right. And that's how I became known on the campus. Okay. And when I needed students to help me protest, the university knew I could get them, and I could get them in a hurry. Okay. So students played a very major role, former students of mine, helping make Michigan State a better place. So there's a young lady in Detroit, Ingrid Saunders Jones. You might look her up, Ingrid Saunders Jones. Okay. She was very much involved. And there was another young lady, I'm trying to think of her, and her husband, who was a lawyer, a very distinguished attorney in Detroit. Now, there were students like that worked with me and helped me deal with discrimination on the campus. And we had our problems. Right. By the time you came to Michigan State,
I was going to say, yeah, things were not.
We had dealt a lot of those difficulties. Yeah.
Right. And Keith was there while I was there. I know Kurt was at Michigan State at that time. Sam was there, so yeah, I didn't personally experience anything like that on campus. Yeah. So you all had done a lot of work. Well, tell us a little bit, if you can talk a little bit about marching, the marches you did with Martin Luther King. That had to be a very scary experience to be marching in the civil rights movement. So what can you tell us about your experience?
Laura, I was never afraid.
Okay.
I learned as a kid that cowards are, I worked with little elementary and middle school kids later on, and I would always tell them, remember, that bully is the most scary kid around. And his behavior to make people afraid. So white men in the South Suggs Ingram, for example, was a sheriff in Grenada, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And black people, and I let that famous picture of me hanging an American flag.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen that picture? If not, I'll make sure Kurt gets it to you.
Okay.
Me hanging the American flag. Suggs Ingram had a reputation of brutalizing blacks. And there was some rumors that they killed black men.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get in his face. I remember one time I taught my class Ed 200 in the morning, took a noon flight to Atlanta, and took another flight over to Mississippi. And I was in a demonstration, and he came up to me with his club. I said, "Don't you hit me with that club." I just told him. And I looked him in the face. And I did go in my old rest stance. And I said, "Don't you I said, "Don't you hit me with that club." And he looked at me as if to say, "Who are you?" And I just looked at him in the face, stood face to face with him, and he backed off. And Grenada, Mississippi was known as the meanest town in Mississippi. Guess what? Andy Young just told me a short time ago that the mayor of Grenada is a young black man who went to Jackson State, majored in agriculture, and came back to Grenada, Mississippi, and the whites got together with the blacks.
Yeah. Isn't he like, I think I heard him on the radio. Isn't he like 19 or 20 years old? I think I heard him on the radio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the whites got together with the blacks. And we are tired of Grenada being known as the meanest place in Mississippi. And let's do something about it. He had graduated from Jackson State. Andy Young just told me this a short time ago, with a degree in agriculture. And the whites and the blacks got together and said, "We're going to make you mayor because we know you. You were born and raised here, and everybody likes you." So the mayor of Grenada, Mississippi is a black man. You ought to call him one day, Laura, and interview him.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name, but you can get his name. He's the mayor of Grenada. When Andy Young told me that, I couldn't believe it. Grenada was a place where blacks were definitely afraid. The mayor's name was Suggs, S-U-G-G-S, Suggs Ingram. And there's a picture of me in my book. A copy of my book? Do you have a copy of my book?
Not yet, but I am going to get it. Your biography? Of your biography? I don't have it yet.
Okay,
I saw pictures on your website, though. That's what I was hoping.
Okay, I'm going to copy the book to you and send it to you.
Thank you.
There's a picture of Suggs shaking his finger in my face, and I told him, "Don't you dare hit me with that club." And of course, if he had clubbed me, Martin Luther, I'll never forget. I led a group of about 12 people up the steps of the Civic Center in Atlanta, Georgia. No, it was the Capitol building. That's the Capitol building. They refused to see Julian Bond. Julian Bond said, "I'm not going to Vietnam. I'm not going to fight the war." So they denied him access to his spot when he wanted. And I remember I was going up the steps with about 12 demonstrators protesting the failure of the county to seat Julian Bond after he won the election. And a state trooper tried to hit me. And when he tried to hit me, I put my arm up like that to block the blow. And I was on the front page of all the local papers in the New York Times. And it looked like I was trying to hit the state trooper, but I wasn't trying to hit him. I was trying to block him from hitting me. So the next morning, my phone rang at about 5 in the morning. Bob, I knew who it was because I knew his voice. He said, "This is Martin." He said, "Do you still believe in nonviolence?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And that's the only time I really, really did not tell the truth to Martin Luther King Jr. Because to me, nonviolence was a tactic, but I wanted to hurt those whites who were hurting black people. I really did.
Right.
And I was not truthful. I tell my wife, the only time I ever lied to Martin Luther King was when he asked me if I strongly believed in nonviolence. I said, "Yes, I do." And I did. Because I really wanted to hurt people.
Oh, yeah, so, absolutely. I can relate.
So anyway, coming back to that experience, I knew the importance of being active. And when you asked the question, when did I first think about freedom as a little kid? I worked for a man by the name of Max Rosenblum. He owned a grocery store. I was maybe I might have been 9 or 10 years of age, and blacks used to charge their groceries, and they didn't have to pay for them until payday, and they would charge $2.87 worth of groceries. When they would leave, Max would change that from $2.87 to $3, and I saw that as a kid, and I challenged him, and he called my mother and told my mother I was very rude to him. And my mother told me to apologize to him. And that's the only time in my life I told my mother, "You can whip me, you can do whatever you want to do. I'm not apologizing to him." And I didn't. So I began to have experiences like that. And in the tailor shop, I was telling Letty, I had to ask the Lord to forgive me for my anger towards Italians. Because I had very bad experience with Italians beginning 11, 12 years of age, working in an Italian barbershop, hearing the N-word, hearing them talk about black folk. I'm over that now. So when you as you know, Laura, as you become an adult, you learn to deal with past discrimination. And I learned early on that there were a lot of good white folk who stood up against racism. And those are the white people I related to. And probably one of my best friends was a man by the name of John Dooley. He was a campus minister at Michigan State. John Dooley and Truman Morrison were two white men who would fight for the rights of blacks. And but when you ask me, I learned about racism at a very early age in the city of Detroit.
Well, let me ask you, fast forwarding, let's talk a little bit about your books. I find your book where you talk about higher, where is it? I wrote it down. I must be a little nervous because I'm not remembering it. Expect the best, provide the most. I hope I'm right.
I'm reaching for a copy of it.
Okay. I found that fascinating because is that the one, expect the best, provide the most? High expectations.
High expectations. But even a more up-to-date one, Laura, is this one here. At the crossroads of fear and freedom, the fight for social and educational justice. I'll repeat that. At the crossroads of fear and freedom, the fight for social and educational justice. Now, this is more current and more up to date, and I've got pictures in here like the one here. I don't know if I can show it,
Mhm.
of me and Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, that was one. Yeah, that was one of the pictures that I, thought I had sent over or that I saw in the website. Yeah, because also
Oh,
there were pictures of you with Andrew Young and was it Robert Kennedy? There was also pictures, I saw that you had, I know you've always been very good friends with Andrew Young, who was a former congressman, like John Lewis was a congressman. So but I like the idea of having high expectations, and you talk about teachers having high expectations of their students, and as well as something that maybe that can translate to how about students having high expectations of themselves, just
right.
carrying that whole concept on. So I
Yes,
found it to be, can you talk a little bit about what that means, or yeah, what that means?
I had observed, even working as a school psychologist in California, that a lot of teachers didn't think much of black kids. And I
Mm.
began to collect data to show that when teachers have high expectations for student success, their students did better in their classes than teachers who had low expectations.
Gotcha.
Example, I was in a classroom in Las Vegas doing a workshop, and this little black boy, probably 7, 8 years of age, very active, very smart, but teachers would call him naughty.
Mm.
She grabbed him one day and snatched him, said, "You are going to grow up just like your daddy. You're going to end up in prison." And his
Mm.
father was in prison at the time. So I was incensed. I asked her to step out the hall. I said, "I am reporting you to the principal. I'm putting you on notice because you predicted that this black boy was going to end up in prison, San Quentin, like his dad."
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I explained to her, ended up giving her a lecture, and she broke into tears. But I was very kind. I wasn't rude or anything. I was just telling her the truth. And she said, "I apologize." I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go to the principal." But I said, "Watch the way you talk to black students." She had black and Hispanic students in her class, especially those little black boys. And she did. We became friends. But teachers don't realize that they can set expectations in such a way that black kids aren't going to do well. You tell somebody you're going to be just like your daddy, and your daddy's in prison. That's not good, because I knew
Right.
kids were. I had one of the nicest, smartest little boys that I was working with, tutoring in a classroom in Las Vegas, and he came to school one day crying, just raising hell, fighting. And I grabbed him. I said, come and talk to me." I said, "What's wrong? What happened?" His father was supposed to come home from prison on a
Mm.
particular, and they kept him and gave
Oh.
him additional time. And I mean, that boy, I had to talk to him. I worked with him and I stayed close to him. And I also checked with the parole authorities. They finally let his dad out. But things like that can get kids depressed and in
Mhm.
trouble. That's what they need to help. So when I talk about high expectations, I talk
Mhm.
about how we need to carry ourselves and conduct ourselves as teachers and counselors, principals, in such a way that kids believe they have a chance to succeed.
Right. I have one more. I have, because we're coming up to time now. So I have one more question. In terms of Dr. King's dream of overcoming and racism and all that, do you think, how far have we come? And how much farther do you think we need to go before we can say that free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last. In Dr. King's,
We're not,
I know we've come a long way, but in your estimation,
we're not there.
not
Andy
yet.
Young was same question by one of the national commentators yesterday, and I talked to him later on last night. We have come a long ways, but we have a long ways to go. Discrimination in employment, discrimination against women, especially Black women. See, I used to always, this was just amazed me at Michigan State. At graduation time, I would always, as a dean, be sitting on the stage when the kids walk across to get their diplomas. For every Black boy that will walk across the stage at Michigan State to get a diploma, 6 or 7 Black women will walk across the stage. So we have a disparity in education. Education is not what we want it to be yet. Educational opportunity. We need to do something about that, and especially Black and Hispanic boys. Start at the kindergarten level, supporting them, pushing them, encouraging them, because society in general is not going to do it. So I think we've made progress, but we have a long ways to go. We have a long ways to admission.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, with that being said, I hope that, that we can continue to move forward and build off the past, go forward and continue the progress that we've already made. So thank you so much, Dr. Green, for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. For those of you who tuned in, thank you for being here. And until next time, stay safe, stay well. Namaste.